Alright guys, so last week I got to be a part of a World Hoppers video, which I'll have linked down below, about underrated fantasy. And we all had such large lists and we all got to talk about like 4 of those things. So I want to make my own video, highlight 10 underrated fantasy things, and I used a very basic definition of things that had less than 10,000 ratings on Goodreads, because I feel like there are a lot of ways you could define this, and maybe I'll do that in future videos, because what is hyped on the internet might not actually be like as hyped in the real world. Like, there are some books that I know the internet loves, that I love, that I can never find at my local bookstore or at Barnes & Noble or Books A Million. I don't know much about Waterstone because I haven't been to England in a minute. But there are just some books that aren't always at your bookstore, but you hear about them online all the time. So that might be a different video. But today is numerically very simple. Less than 10,000 Goodreads ratings, and I have 10 things for you. And I'm going to start with the one that like really breaks my heart. And that's the Sunspot Jungle Volumes 1 and 2 short story anthologies. I think the first one has 34 ratings and the second one has 12 ratings. Like, I know short story collections are not as read. Like, I understand that, so on a baseline, it has that going against it. I also know this doesn't come from a large publisher. This was actually, I think, if I'm remembering, it was for Rosarium Publishing. They were doing kind of an anniversary celebration with this with a Kickstarter. But you can buy this online. You're just never going to see it at your bookstore, but there are paperback and ebooks online. My library had copies. So it's available to purchase and consume, and it has so many amazing authors and so many new authors, and it's so diverse that there is for sure an author in here for you. Like, of all the 1,000 plus pages of short stories, there's a short story in there that's going to speak to you and will give you a new author to look up. And if you needed to know some of the authors that are popular, that are in there, you got N.K. Jemisin, you got Silvia Moreno Garcia, you have Carmen Murillo Machado, you've got, oh my gosh, I'm blanking now, P. Jelly Clark, Rebecca Roanhorse, Carlos Hernandez. Like, these are all authors I really love. Karen Lord. They're all in these collections, but then there are also so many others that I've now looked up their other works, because sometimes if I enjoy an author's voice, I'm like, well, I need to read more of your voice and your thoughts and your opinions. Give it all to me. And so I highly recommend looking into these because they are diverse globally. Like, I have read so many translated works from this, which is not something I get to do all the time in my fantasy sci-fi reading. So many, and there's going to be horror, there's going to be fantasy, there's going to be sci-fi. So I know I'm putting this in the fantasy section, but it's just so underrated, like literally the definition of an underrated work of art that I want more people to consume. And look how pretty they are. Like, these are gorgeous covers. If I could get my hands on the Kickstarters, I definitely would. Those were in hardback and included art. I don't think the art is in the paperbacks, but I have seen one in person because I had the first one from the library physically. Stunning. Absolutely stunning. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention. Now let's look at my list and see what the next one is that makes me sad. Oh yes, Each of Us a Desert. Still 734 ratings when I made these notes. It's just such a crime. So I do have a review for this because it's an underrated gem of a young adult book. It is so good, and I did talk about this in the World Hoppers video. I love this story. So this is a future fantasy dystopia. You have Xochi. She is a memory taker. She gives it back to the earth. So basically people come to her with a confession of some sort to get it off their chest. She takes it in, and then she has to go through this whole process to give it back to the land, or else she is told and made to believe monsters will come and attack and destroy her village. That's where we start. But then Xochi's like, I'm exhausted. I am 14. I want a life that is my own. I don't want to be bombarded with other people's lives. When do I get to live? And then she goes on an adventure, and she travels across this world, and it's a cool way to learn about this really cool dystopian fantasy world. She meets people, we learn more stories, more perspectives of this world, and it's just fantastic. I really love it, and no one's reading it. And it's driving me insane. It's driving me absolutely insane. Yes, it's slower paced than people are used to. Yes, it has a narrative framing that's not common in young adult, but it's still very much a young adult story, so I would hesitate to say that it should have been published somewhere else. This is a coming-of-age story with coming-of-age themes, and I do think a lot of teenagers, if they pick this up, would gain a lot from it, because it also has great thematic work for just that whole area. I loved it so much. It's everything I want when I think, man, I want a fantasy that has Latinx influences, which it for sure does. It is so good. It's down to the naming conventions, to the words that are used commonly in the world. It's amazing. I was so surprised at how much I loved the narrative flow of this story, because I am not a traveling person story. That is not my trope. That's actually my anti-buzzword. If someone says, oh, and they go on a quest and they're gonna travel, I'm like, ooh. And it did not matter here. It worked perfectly for me. The next one we gotta talk about is Phoenix Extravagant by Yoon Ha Lee. This has like 900 some ratings. I don't know if this is because it came out during the Pandora's Box. I don't know. But it's weird to me. I don't see it in my bookstores. I don't see people talking about it. I don't think a lot of people got ARCs. This is a standalone fantasy, a standalone adult fantasy. Like that's a rarity within itself, right? It's a standalone adult fantasy with kind of, I think, steampunk, diesel punk vibes, some mech creatures, a non-binary main character who's an artist. Our main character is an artist. Our main character is adjacent to a revolution, but is not a revolutionary, which I think is a really cool perspective in a fantasy story about a revolution, because we've all read that story. I mean, I love Mistborn. That's what that story is. But we just have a person who's just trying to exist and gets thrown into this mess, who's an artist. It has so many cool components. Now, do I love the ending? The ending's a choice. There were decisions made, they were obviously intentional, and I don't necessarily agree with the choices, but I still loved the story. I really enjoy Yoon Ha Lee's imagination. They are one of my favorite science fiction authors, so seeing what they do in the fantasy space was really interesting. It pulls a lot from our own historical history here in the world, so there's a lot to really like there, and I do think it has an audience, and that audience has not found it. So if you think this might work for you, you should pick it up. Just know that the ending's a little weird. I'm not saying it's not satisfying, like it's an ending. It's not like it feels like we need more books per se. It's just like a choice. But it's also a book that I had so much fun discussing with my Patreon, because that's where we talked about it. And we have made many shirt designs that'll probably never come to fruition based off quotes that were said in that book club discussion. But it was a really good time. I know Justine and Judith really like it. I just think it clicks so many boxes of things that people are looking for. Like, it's a less than 400-page standalone fantasy book, guys. In theory, that is what the world wants. That's what people are always asking me for. Quick standalone fantasy. That's what I'm always asked for, and I can't give that very often. So here it is. More people read it. Give it more ratings. This whole list is just me being like, but how? But how? And our next one. Okay, now we're at least getting into, at least they have 1,000 ratings. We're getting there. And actually, this next one on my list has 2,200. It might be more than that by the time you're seeing this. This is Dark and Deepest Red by Anna Marie McLemore. I really liked this story. This is a really great story, I think, for people who really like Uprooted, the Winternight trilogy, Spinning Silver. If like any of those are like, oh, I really liked those. This is me telling you it gives you those same vibes. It's very lyrical and atmospheric in its writing, and it still has like, I don't know, that same kind of bingeable quality that those stories always have for me, especially like Uprooted. It has none of the same like settings or anything like that. It's very different. We have actually 2 stories side by side, one that is modern and contemporary and one that is in the past, and they both are dealing with kind of more, I hesitate to say magical realism because it's not quite magical realism. It's more like fairy tale folklore magic, where there's things happening that you would have heard in like a fairy tale happening to our characters in real time, and they're trying to figure out what's going on while also dealing with prejudice and racism and their own identity. And I binged that in 2 days, even though I wouldn't call it like a super fast-paced story, but I couldn't put it down. The writing just flowed. I wanted to see how these 2 timelines were connected. I loved watching the found family and the friendships that were formed. I read this probably almost a year ago exactly, and I still think about it. And I was surprised. It was one of those books I just picked up because a friend had read it and recommended it, and I was like, well, we'll just see what happens, and then it consumed my entire weekend. So, I have heard that this isn't their best work. I don't understand what that means. That means I need to read more of their works. But for me, this was amazing. I had a great time, and I'm really looking forward to reading more of the backlist and future works by Anna Marie McLemore. But I do think this deserves more ratings, like, because right now I'm just like, again, but why? The next egregious one is Redemption in Indigo, and this is probably one of the ones where you're like, Angela, you've talked about this every chance you've gotten for forever, and I'm going to until more people read it. Because, yes, of course, no book is for everyone, and I'm sure someone will read this on my recommendation and be like, Angela, you led me astray. I did not like my experience. But I don't care. Because for every one of those people, maybe I'll have 3 or 4 who are like, this was amazing. How did I not know this was here? I needed it in my life. And this is the epitome of an adult fairy tale folklore story. It's a retelling from the Caribbean. It is such a fun, humorous writing style. Granted, I am so biased. I think I could read anything Karen Lord writes. We're going to prove that soon. I have 2 more works to read by them. But like, oh, this story, I read the first line and all of a sudden I'm like, what? Because I didn't know what I was in for. I literally picked it up off a recommendation for a different book series. And the cover in the US, I'll show it for a second, this does not inspire humor. This does not inspire a good time. I don't think I'm going to be whisked away on some adventure and some shenanigans. No. This is a story about chaos gods. This is a story about a woman who's just trying to appease her family and her husband and also just like breathe. This is a story about gods and humans and spirits, and it's a great fairy tale, and it wraps up so nicely. I don't know what more to say to get people to read Redemption in Indigo, but it's worth a try. It's also, again, very short, standalone fantasy, less than 300 pages. It needs more. It needs more love. This is just the hill I'm going to die on for a very long time. If you want me to stop on this hill, read the book. Go rate it. Go tell your friends. Buy people copies. Things like that. Next up, we've got The Prey of Gods by Nikki Drayden. I believe this has about 2,800 to maybe 3,000 ratings. This book was a bananas fun good time, and I don't understand. I mean, I do understand it's not really sold, and I don't really know how you market it because it's kind of sci-fantasy, but it's definitely fantasy because it's modern day with gods and some really weird effects of sort of drugs, but it's kind of magic. It's weird, but it's weird in the best way, and it's a standalone again, and it's one of those things that if you've read things like The Library at Mount Char or Middle Game and you're like, I just kind of like when the plot gets weird and don't know where things are going, I think you should pick it up. It's got a lot of moving parts, but really interesting, morally gray characters. Like, you read different perspectives. Some of them are obviously the antagonists, but you're also like, I get you. Like, they are very complex, well-rounded characters that are so fun to watch. Go through this, like, short time period in South Africa, and you're just like, what's happening? Like, there are gods, there's AI robots uprising, there's so much. But this was like the joy of my life when I read it the week I read it. I was like, this is so engaging. I just want to know what's happening next. I have no clue what's happening. There's so much. And I'm so excited to read more by Nikki Drayden because I hear that her imagination only gets better. But you guys should read this one because it's really weird in a cool way, in my opinion. And it deserves more than 3,000 ratings. The next one is Incendiary by Zoraida Cordova, and I really liked this young adult, but apparently it has less than 5,000 ratings, so the rest of people, I guess, didn't. I mean, I do know some people where it's more met, because this is definitely a young adult book that leans into young adult tropes. So if you're just like, I don't want another young adult book with these tropes, and if you don't connect to the other elements like the world building or the themes, I could see it not working. I don't read that much young adult, so sometimes I do want something that scratches those trope itches for me, and I really liked the setting and the inspiration for it, because it's inspired by the Spanish Inquisition, I believe, so I really liked that it was in Spain, kind of influenced area, because I don't know, I just like going to a different country once in a while. I feel like everything's always set in, like, medieval Europe, and this is still Europe, but it's at least, like, Spain. I really liked the magic and how that worked out. And, like, I do like Ren. Like, I think she's completely fine. Although I liked the people around her more in the situations. Like, my heart could not stop beating for the first third of the book. I was so tense. I was so like, what's happening. And then by the end of the book, it has set me up for some of my favorite tropes in Illusionary, which I haven't read yet. So if you like tropey YA sometimes and you want to have a different setting, I say pick it up. I thought it was really fast-paced. Like, it's like I said, it didn't blow me away. It didn't strike me as this is unique fantasy. But sometimes you don't need unique fantasy. Sometimes you just want something comfortable but also plays with new ideas, and that's exactly what this was. I had such a good time. I cannot wait to read Illusionary. My stupid loan says I have to wait 10 weeks, but I'll get there. I will get to it. All right, this one's one that legit shocked me. This is The Sword of Kaigen, which, if you're on BookTube, you'd be like, how is this underhyped? Because at least in adult SFF BookTube, everyone talks about this book in the past year. But it only has 5,000 ratings. I checked. And what? This is, again, a standalone fantasy, and it destroyed me. It destroyed me in the ways that I like to be destroyed. Let me preface it that way. Like, it wasn't like super grim dark, but it was a story with very real consequences that also really delved into handling those consequences. And I love it. I have a gushing review that is not done in my best lighting, but it has all of my enthusiasm, so I'll link it down below. I love this book. And I know that there are critiques. Many people have critiqued it, but many of those people have also said, despite these critiques, it was still so worth it. And I don't know how to get this in more people's hands, because it's not sold at local bookstores or anything like that. Probably because it's self-published, like it does have like a paperback version now, but I never see it at stores. This is a why? So this feels like shouting into the void, but like everyone on the book internet already knows about the Sword of Kaigen, I believe. And if you don't, may I highly recommend, if you like high epic fantasy stories, and if you at all think our tastes align, you need to pick it up. Sometimes it's on Kindle Unlimited. Sometimes the Kindle's on sale for like $2. Really try it out because it's amazing. I could tell you some common critiques people always have, but just know, like, for me, like, if our tastes align, it's a near perfect book for me. Like, I don't notice the flaws when I'm reading it, which means essentially the flaws don't exist. Because for me, if a flaw takes me out of the story, that's when it becomes a flaw, because no book is actually perfect. But while I read it, I was in it. I knew from the first chapter that it was a 5-star read, which doesn't happen all the time. So this is like an all-time favorite that has 5,000 ratings, so it like this crushes me like a lot. This next one almost breaks my like release rule, although like it was like end of 2020, so maybe that's why it has a low rating. But this is The Bone Shard Daughter. I believe this has like 6,700 ratings, so I'm hoping this will go up, because I think this actually is really good for people who like mid-weight fantasy. And what I mean by that is, if books like Foundryside or Warbreaker are things that you're like, yeah, I really like that, this has a similar weight of politics and fantasy in terms of like, it's still got some complexities and intrigue. Like, you still have to pay attention. There's still a lot of cool stuff going on, but it's not as dense or as complex as maybe, first one that's coming to mind for me is like Malazan. Like, it's I don't know how to describe it, because it's not surface level, but it's just not like as involved or as immersive for read, but it's like still a very fun pleasure read, which is what I think of with Robert Jackson Bennett books. So like The City of Stairs, Foundryside are very similar weights of heaviness that I would describe for The Bone Shard Daughter. And we do have like a whole discussion with the Space Sirens book club for when we read this. We have that for Incendiary too. So I will link both of those down below if you want to hear some of our thoughts, because we do always have like a spoiler-free discussion section at the beginning where a bunch of us say what our experiences are, and we rarely all agree, so you can definitely get a good sense of what worked and didn't work for people. And I think this deserves more. I do think this deserves to be a real hit in like the fantasy market, because I think this is a very accessible piece of fantasy. And I think we need more of that. Like, I love fantasy in all of its flavors, but I'm always searching for like the next accessible fantasy I can give to my friend to try and convince them to come over and read all of the books with me. Because, I don't know, you need something that will grip a person but also not scare them away. Because learning how to read fantasy is a skill. Like, I think we all subconsciously grow muscles to handle certain words over and over again. But also, as like a fantasy veteran, I still enjoyed The Bone Shard Daughter. I think it's a very accessible but enjoyable piece of fiction, and I think it deserves all the ratings, so go pick it up. And now our last one is one that actually really shocked me, because this is one of those, again, where I'm like, based off BookTube, I thought this was really popular, and that's An Unkindness of Magicians, clocking in at 8,000 ratings, about. I thought it had way more than that, especially since I think I first heard this on Murphy Napier's channel. Like, I mean, and she has, like, 250,000 subscribers, so she talks about it quite often and has a much bigger net than me, so I just thought I would have more, which makes me very sad that, like, we really don't have a large influence on people's buying habits, which is, like, fine. But this one is actually not one of my favorite, but I, like, had a great time. This is, again, a very accessible piece of fantasy. It's a great, like, what I'd call a vacation read. Like, if you need that, like, bingeable, cannot put this down book, that's what it was for me. It is really fast-paced. It has really intriguing mystery. It has a pretty accessible world. You've got some characters that I think are pretty easy to latch onto. I will say that I'm saying think because I have done a book club with this, and I got the same impression there, that if you really like V.E. Schwab's writing, I think this book will work really well for you. Like, I highly, highly recommend it. Because I think, again, this has a very similar character work style and world-building style to V.E. Schwab, personally. And I have read, I think, all of V.E. Schwab's adult works besides The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. So, like, I say this, I know I don't ever talk about any V.E. Schwab books, but I say this knowing their work. And I got a similar feeling when I read An Unkindness of Magicians. And that's to say that that's not my taste, per se. I don't love it that much, but I had a blast just, like, binging it out. It was a very enjoyable read, so I do think it deserves more love. It's a book I never see at my bookstores, and I go to quite a few. I can't go to a place with a bookstore and not walk in, so I see quite a few of what the bookstores in the United States have to offer. So yeah, but these were it. These were the 10. I rambled a lot. Maybe you'll get one. Maybe you'll read it, or more than likely you're like, Angela, I've heard you talk about these books over and over and over again. When will you stop? And I will stop when they are given the ratings they are deserved. And let me know some that are on your list that maybe meet my criteria, or what you considered an underrated fantasy book to put on my radar that you think I should read based off my taste. I'm always looking for more recommendations. I love reading, like, hidden gems. I feel like we all do, right? We all like to be, like, in the know and push things that are not as popular. Although, I say it as someone who loves mega popular authors, so I'm definitely not a hipster in the fantasy world. I just love reading and love finding new things that I love. And for your emoji, I don't know. What's the last book I just talked about? An Unkindness of Magicians? That has, like, snow in it, and it's summer, so that'd be a weird thing to do. But yeah, leave, like, a snowflake in the description down below. Not the description, the comments. Can you tell it's late on a Friday? And like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.